This election was a turning point for Indonesia because if General Prabowo had won, it would have opened the door to a return to a kind of neo-fascism in Indonesia, a return to the ways of the old Suharto dictatorship. Prabowo is the most notorious mass killer in Indonesia. He's been implicated in mass killings in East Timor, Papua, Aceh, the kidnapping and torture of activists in Jakarta. He was also the closest U.S. protege in Indonesia, working directly for the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency and U.S. Special Forces, repeatedly bringing U.S. Special Forces into Indonesia, where, among other things, they did reconnaissance for, as Prabowo told me, U.S. contingency planning for an invasion of Indonesia if the U.S. ever decided to do that. Years ago, when Prabowo mused to me when we had a conversation about the possibility of him seizing power and becoming what he called a fascist dictator. So his defeat is something of a turning point. It's the second time he has been defeated by Jokowi, the incumbent president. But he refuses to accept that defeat. He has, in effect, proclaimed himself the president, and now his backers, who include Islamist organizations, including a group called the FPI, and even elements of ISIS, have been out on the street trying to provoke an emergency which would require army intervention to take over the country and place Prabowo in power. The tactics they've used are reminiscent of tactics that were used by Prabowo and other forces when his father-in-law, the dictator Suharto, the U.S.-backed dictator, was being overthrown by a popular uprising in '98. In May of '98, they staged an operation against the local Chinese population, burning, looting, creating chaos. Also similar to tactics used in 1999 in East Timor, where the Indonesian military, including General Subianto, who you just mentioned, used militias to stage arson, do killings, create chaos in East Timor after the Timorese voted for independence in a UN-sponsored referendum. And it also is kind of a rerun of an attempted coup, which forces connected to Prabowo tried to stage in late 2016, early 2017, in what was known in Indonesia as the 212 movement, where they aligned with an Islamist street movement, which actually got broad popular support from conservative elements of the Islamist movement in Indonesia. And as military people at the time described it to me, their hope was to go in and actually physically take over the Congress, physically occupy the palace, and seize power. They failed at that time. Prabowo tried again this time after losing the election, but it looks like he doesn't have enough people on the streets. The deeper conflict that's happening is the old U.S.-trained generals versus democracy. There's Prabowo, who's trying to overturn an election result, but there are also key generals who are on the side of the winner of the election, President Jokowi, namely Generals Hendro Priyono and Wiranto, who are themselves mass killers, who've been involved in crimes like the '99 Timor massacres, the assassination of Munir, the leading human rights advocate, the Talang Sadi massacre. They have been trying to do arrests of political dissidents and basically trying to crush free speech in Indonesia. So democracy is under siege from both sides of the partisan political spectrum by U.S.-trained generals, some of them working in alliance with these Islamist street organizations, a number of which were originally launched and created by the Indonesian army.